Welcome back to Direct Station, where politics and planets collide and converge. I am Carey. For those just tuning in around here, we are picking a headline or two or three, and we're taking a peek at the sky to try to make sense of it all. We're doing that because in astrology, though you may not know it, and may not yet believe it, there is a scholarship to the field and a significant body of research at this point. And there are just patterns and correlated events, bodies, sections of the sky that give us kind of reliable clues, you know? I am not here to predict. I will leave that to wiser ones, though many of them right now are saying they don't know what to expect because the particular storm we're in has never gathered before in human history, truly. So I'm just here to try to contextualize the events that we're experiencing and use history of world and planetary events to find meaning and possibility in what might happen next, what our role might be as it all unfolds. So like if you've baked a cake before, and I'm so sorry, but allergy city. So like if you've baked a cake before, you know how that tends to go and what your decisions tend to result in, right? If you skip the baking soda, you know how that turns out. And if you've walked your dog before, you have a fairly reliable understanding of how that's going to go. There's probably one direction that has some shitty dog who lives a couple of streets over that you'd rather not see. So you guys go in this direction, right? So it's predictable. If you have scraped your knee pretty bad so that pants aren't going to be comfortable, you know maybe you should wear a skirt or shorts or something more soft. You also know it's going to be a minute, and you can mostly guess at how the healing will unfold, right? You've seen this kind of cut before. So that's astrology. Astrology can say, hey, when this guy was at this part of the sky at this angle to the other stuff, here's what happened. Here's what went down. Over and over and over again. You can go back and you can look. It's all recorded and it's all cyclical. Each planet has its own timer. They're all different and they're all consistent. And the astrologers know the cycles. Isn't that cool? So then they can tell you how the cake baking is likely to go. You know, so we have this predictable set of phenomena, and you have this new combo of variables. And sometimes the variables have coincided in the past, so astrologers have a guess about what might unfold. But sometimes we live through multiple variables that have never occurred in the sky at the same time. So now, for the first time ever, you've got a scraped knee, uncomfortable in pants, you've got a cake in the oven, and you've got a dog walk all co-occurring. Well, what does that look like? So all we can do is gauge our experiences with the three separate things and have a good think. And that, my friends, is now. That is March and April 25 through mid 26. The wise wisdom have been talking about this time for decades, trying to piece the variables together, and now we get to live it. I mean, look at March and the beginning of April. My goodness. Now we know. So let's keep looking and keep making meaning of this wild ride as it unfolds across April, the rest of April. And let's, for heaven's sakes, co-create a space where everybody is conscious and kind and doing their damnedest to be well, no matter who they voted for, friends. Today, I want to dive into the chaos of the last few weeks. I am assuming it has affected you quite a bit in your personal life and in your ability to process all that we're living through as a collective. It certainly has for me. You may have noticed I haven't recorded in a couple weeks. I'm hoping to fix that pattern. But I'm also trying to be gentle, as all of these movements affect me personally, affect us all personally and collectively. But this overwhelming acceleration that's been happening since we last talked, do you feel it too? In politics, you've got the trade wars escalating with sharp tariffs one day and pause the next. The deportations to El Salvador's Sikap prison continue. The expected but somehow still shocking nightmare of watching the executive branch blow off Supreme Court decisions. The pace has shifted, and it will continue to escalate through the end of the month, I regret to report. The most intense part of this year is now, and in the weeks to come, in the days, I should say, to come. But I promise, even though we're going to wade into some of that intensity here today, we won't stay there. We're going to explore these major planetary patterns that help explain why everything feels so overwhelming right now and how those same patterns contain the seeds of hope. We're also going to talk about what we can do to root and ground ourselves in order to make it through this time whole and possibly even elevated, possibly even more clear, more aligned, more ready for what comes next. because the planets are not just bringing chaos, they are bringing clarity too. I want you to walk away from this episode with both an understanding of the larger cosmic weather, if you will, and some actual tangible reasons to hope. So let's get started by looking at what the actual fuck is happening in the news, and then we'll continue to connect it to the sky. The big economic story is, of course, this trade war with the world, and especially China, that continues to grow at an alarming pace. The Trump administration has slapped eye-watering tariffs on all kinds of products, and no one seems to know what's actually exempt or not because the administration keeps changing its mind. China, in particular, continues to react. One day, electronics are not included. The next, they are. Then they're not again. The markets are in turmoil, bopping up and down. For the first time ever, we're seeing signs that the world is losing faith in the U.S. Treasury bond. Literally the bedrock of the global financial system, the thing everybody has always considered the safest investment on Earth. And then there was that wild moment when the president straight up told his followers to, quote, be cool, and, quote, this is a great time to buy, right before he paused the tariffs and the market soared. Members of Congress are asking how that's not market manipulation, but here we are. It looks like a lot of plutocrats and oligarchs associated with the administration got quite a bit richer in the process. It seems likely that the global economic order will end up shifting away from a trust of the United States as a stable, benevolent, well-intentioned actor upon which other economies can rely, around which other economies can safely plot their own. In a matter of weeks, this administration has managed to foster a level of global instability not seen in hundreds of years. That is where we are. Then there's the deportation, kidnapping, disappearing nightmare that carries on. In a truly dystopian turn, the administration is officially defying a federal judge and the Supreme Court's order to effect the return of a Maryland man, Armando Garcia, who was unlawfully deported there despite the Supreme Court unanimously stating that they should cause this man's return. In a show of defiance and, I don't know, gleeful irony, in fact, the administration today met with El Salvador's President Bukele while announcing the shipping of 10 more immigrant men to CICAP, Bukele's notorious horror camp, from which he laughingly said to the American press this afternoon that it was, quote, preposterous to expect that he would return Garcia. And still in the background, we've got the mass firings across agencies in America's imperfect safety net, from consumer protection to Social Security, where checks have predictably begun to fail to arrive, to public health, to anti-corruption, to scientific research, as well as the mass targeting of civil society, the museums, the libraries, the universities. RFK Jr. is presiding over a deadly outbreak of measles in Texas and New Mexico, a disease we had so successfully contained through vaccination that it was declared eliminated in the United States in 2000, only to resurge now amid dangerous anti-vax rhetoric. His office recently, under pressure, released a middling endorsement of the vaccine, which really pissed off his supporters, I should say. But nothing like that has actually come out of his mouth publicly anyway. It's a lot, I know, and it can feel overwhelming and chaotic, and like nothing makes sense anymore. It can feel like, when will it end? It can feel like nothing will ever be easy again. But I promise you there are patterns here. There are cosmic contexts that can help us make sense of the moment. Not to excuse it, but to understand it as part of a larger cycle that has happened before and will happen again. We can even begin to imagine together what the possibilities are for the parts of this that have never happened before, because understanding these patterns and the way they have worked in the past helps us to see both how dangerous this combination might become and how we might find our way out of it, through it, I should say. Now more than ever, our free will, our role as agents of history, really, 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 really matters. So there are 3 major astrological patterns happening right now that explain what we're experiencing. There are more, of course, but I try to do only 3 or 4 a day. And the key thing to understand is that there aren't just three random events. They're converging in a way that creates a perfect storm of institutional breakdown, economic upheaval, and identity crisis. Let's start with Neptune, of course. With Neptune, you'll continue to hear me talk a lot about him because when he moves neighborhoods, it really affects things on Earth. So Neptune, the planet of dreams, illusions, spirituality, disillusion, disassembly, of coming undone, has crossed the threshold of the skyland of dreamy Pisces into the skyland of doing Aries for the first time in 165 years. This is huge. Neptune has been swimming in the gooey waters of Pisces since 2011, but now it's taking its first step into fiery Aries territory. What's fascinating about this Neptune ingress, remember ingress is a vocabulary word for changing sections of the sky, moving from one to another, it's that we're experiencing it in real time as it unfolds. Neptune sits at 0 degrees of Aries right now, literally at the doorstep of the new astrological territory, and I should say at the doorstep of a new beginning of the entire zodiacal cycle. So it's morning in America, if you will. This creates a sort of threshold effect. When we're caught between two realities, the dissolving Piscean dream world and the emerging Aries action world. What Neptune and Pisces gave us over the last 14 years was a collective immersion in a fantasy, illusion, and spiritual seeking. Think about how much we've escaped into streaming services or conspiracy theories or cult-like phenomena, social media echo chambers, and even like a numbed out orientation to stimuli such as other people's suffering. But now, as Neptune changes neighborhoods and steps into Aries, those escapist tendencies are colliding with this impulse towards direct action. It's like Neptune is being pushed into Aries while still dragging Piscean baggage around. You know that feeling where you're definitely awake, but the intense dream you just had is still lurking around, and you can't tell what's real and what's not? This ingress, this shift in neighborhood of the dream planet, creates this disorienting effect where we're simultaneously dissolving old structures, old dreams, old nightmares, while impulsively beginning to imagine new ones before we even know what they should look like, before we even know what we're responding to. Yeah. We can get smarter about this by looking at previous periods where Neptune entered Aries in history. During the 1861 and 1862 ingress, we saw not just the start of the Civil War, which I know everyone is talking about, but here I want to draw your attention specifically to the collapse of the boundaries between states and the federal government. The entire concept of what America actually meant was up for grabs. Was it going to be a collection of states with different moralities and social orders, or was it going to be one union with one common set of beliefs or facts? Sound familiar? We also saw during that period in the 1860s the boundaries between civilian and military authority blurring dangerously, the targeting of residents like Garcia or any of these disappearing college students showing this exact pattern, treating dissent as if it were treason, conflating disagreement with disloyalty. It's a bad dream we've got to shake off, right? Neptune in Aries challenges the very concept of identity. Who are we as a nation? Who is loyal? Who is disloyal? What boundaries exist between government branches, between reality and propaganda, between national security and political theater? The truth will emerge heartily while we are in Aries, and the hard part for us is that we're living through that transition. I sometimes lately am noticing elders who are passing at this as this thing heats up. And I'm thinking, too, about the babies that'll be born after it all settles in late 26. Those are easier paths than ours. We've got a fairly rough assignment. We have to be present for the intensity and the confusion and the turmoil of the shift. And it's rough, to be sure. But if you believe, as I do, that we arrive when we need to, how we need to, for our assignment in this world, then I want to tell you that you, my friend, are here at this pivotal time with these pivotal people during these pivotal events for a reason. The second major factor on top of that Neptune ingress into Aries that is supercharging this moment is that Saturn, the planet of reality, of gravity, of consequence, is now approaching an almost exact conjunction or meetup with Neptune. Saturn and Neptune are cosmic opposites in many ways. Saturn represents structure, boundaries, concreteness, right? While Neptune represents dissolution, things coming apart, spiritual transcendence. When they dance together, we get this confusing paradox of rigid fluidity and structured chaos. These planets are causing very different lived experiences in all of us, and when they come together, it affects us a lot. So, like, if you fucked around and found out, that was Saturn. If you dreamed a beautiful dream that seemed almost touchable but then dissolved like mist when you tried to grasp it, that was Neptune. If you've fallen into an altered state where time seemed to both stand still and rush by, where boundaries between you and others momentarily disappeared, where you felt connected to something so much larger than yourself, that's Neptune, working his magic. If something you've worked for and tried for suddenly becomes very, very real, that's Saturn. So what happens when the finding out force intersects with the imagined force? What happens when the getting real force intersects with the dream force? Well, it gets wild, systematically so. Astrologists have been and will be talking about this Saturn-Neptune conjunction through the early parts of next year because it'll continue to play out, and it's a really big deal. They're almost meeting this year, and next year they're really meeting. And what's special about this meet, this particular Saturn-Neptune dance that we get now, is that it's happening as Neptune begins its Aries journey, creating a double whammy of boundary confusion. So if we're coming to around a dream or a delusion that's slowly but surely beginning to fade, it makes sense that we're feeling unstable and uncertain as we try to sort out what will be true when it's really over. One astrological history scholar, Richard Tarnas, spoke of the Saturn-Neptune dance as one in which science and religion heat up, and the collective starts to question the logic of the other. This is wildly true in our time, right? So Tarnas points out that during one of the Saturn-Neptune conjunctions, the infamous Scopes trial happens, where it was finally determined that it couldn't be illegal to teach science that contradicted the seminal text of a religion or two. I'm speaking of teaching evolutionary biology in Tennessee, of course, something that has once again become dangerous, right? I mean, Charles Darwin himself, the guy who theorized and proved that evolution was real, that all life came from a common ancestor and changed over time, was also born during a Saturn-Neptune conjunction. You cannot make this shit up. So we're seeing that convergence of truth and fantasy, science and story, escapism and consequence, as the White House blows off the Supreme Court's authority. Do the old solid laws and punishments matter? Or is the easy dream of bad immigrants, good leader, prevail? We're seeing it with the mass firings, too. Do the old institutions matter, or is the mantra lie about fraud, waste, abuse to be believed? Or Bukele coming to the White House and saying, nah, we're not going to return Garcia. Who is in charge? Will their cruel actions upon the precious lives of these men have consequences? Or will we live in a departure from reality that they are spinning? Or RFK going back and forth about the measles vaccine half-heartedly. Is science real? Is the hope that exposure to a disease will protect our children real? And a third key player, if you'll allow, in this cosmic drama is the North Node, the future, the destiny of us all, the head of the dragon, where we are going. The North Node, I want to remind you, is a mathematical point in the sky, one of two, that marks the place where the moon's arc and the sun's arc intersect. It's a thing. It's a real thing that astronomers acknowledge and work with, right? So that North Node, what we have come to know about it and its placement in the skylands, in the different sections of the sky, is that where that North Node is pointing tends to be where we are going. Each of the planets is having its own special meetup right now with that North Node as they assemble in this section of the sky. It's almost like the North Node is in charge of the road ahead and says, hey, guys, we need to cause some shit. Meet me in the Pisces and Aries skyland, eventually Aquarius too. We'll have so much more fun talking about that part eventually. But so like the North Node said, y'all, we have a lot to cause. I've decided where we're heading, and I'm going to need y'all to make some moves and affect some things so we can see how and where and why the earthly bodies will respond, what they'll make of it. There's a few options I can imagine, but it's definitely change a clock in this general direction, okay? So come to my meeting, and let's meet individually one by one beforehand. So like Neptune on the way to its Aries spot had a nice long sit-in with the North Node with Destiny. They canoodled and plotted. We're not sure which parts dreamy Neptune took to his Aries post, but they definitely met. Now Saturn, Mr. Sirius, on his way to the spot almost conjunct to Neptune, he's stepping by and he'll have a good chat with the North Node, with Destiny, on Thursday, the 17th. Venus, planet of love, money, values, is also having some cozy alone time with the North Node. She's gonna, burst into the Saturn meeting. I'm so sorry. Did I have my time wrong, Mr. Sirius, Mr. Gravity? I thought it was my time to discuss love in all of this. All right, so Saturn will leave after a day or two, and then Venus has her moment alone, plotting fate with the node. Then a few days later, Uranus, Mr. Chaos, Mr. Revolution, Mr. Sudden Change, arrives for his meeting, not conjunct, but in a sextile with the North Node. A sextile is another vocabulary word for an angle that causes an unbroken flow of energy. So, guys, it's like, think of the most important conference in your field. It's in a big hotel, and anybody who's anybody will be there, right? And you know how it's a great time to meet with people outside of the sessions or the speeches. Some people only come for the meetings. Some people even arrive early to plot the plan for how to move through the event, right? That's what's happening now. That's what's been happening. One by one, they're all having their moment with the North Node to discuss fate, to discuss the outcome. And then each of them finds their perfect storm spot and waits for the main event to unfold. As each of these planets moves into its fateful position in the next week or so, this storm, the North Node is sitting in the mix of it. The nodal axis is saying, y'all, this is the big one. This is the place to be. These are the interactions of a lifetime. Everybody cause your shit now-ish, simultaneously-ish. Let's see what happens if we scrape the knee, make a cake, take a walk all at once. Everybody go. The North Node represents our collective growing edge, right? The unfamiliar territory we are meant to develop and where it's located. It's telling us that our path forward involves, I'm telling you from the skyland it is pointing into, involves developing greater empathy, spiritual awareness, and a recognition of our interconnectedness, even as, or perhaps, y'all, because institutions are crumbling around us. Maybe we needed things to fall apart in order to come together. So as you see these divisions between us and them become amplified, these questions about what's real and what's a lie, this slow and steady clarity beginning to emerge around the extent of the delusion and the profound consequences for so many people believing it, that is us collectively heeding the North Node's call to recognize our fundamental oneness. The path through this chaos we are finally seeing isn't found in more detailed analysis or better crafted arguments or a better strategy for one political party or another. It is found in the courage to embrace the spot in the sky that the North Node is pointing to. And it is the skyland of compassion, forgiveness, recognition that we are all in this together. Whatever card we thought we had that would protect us from the mess of our own making, those cards are invalid now. The disillusion, the undoing is coming for all of us in our own way, in our own time, and who we are, our base integrity, which is Saturn, our core capacity to love, which is Venus, our willingness to face shocking reality, Uranus, our courage to distinguish between fantasy and truth, Neptune. These are the qualities that will determine how we navigate this threshold moment. Saturn demands that we face consequences with maturity. Venus insists we maintain connection amid division. Neptune asks us to discern between dreams worth pursuing and delusions that destroy. And Uranus challenges us to embrace necessary upheaval without losing our humanity. Together, these planets converging with the North Node create both our greatest challenge and our most profound opportunity to recognize that no economic system, no border, no ideology can ultimately separate us from our shared humanity. The planetary weather is revealing this simple, profound fact. Alice Walker captures exactly what this moment is becoming astrologically in her book entitled Anything We Love Can Be Saved. She writes about what happens as the pivotal moment of this struggle emerges. And Lord, we are in a pivotal moment in our struggle as the planets assemble for the conference of a lifetime. Walker says, there is always a moment in any kind of struggle when one feels in full bloom, vivid, alive. One might be blown to bits in such a moment and still be at peace. Martin Luther King Jr. at the mountaintop, Gandhi dying with the name of God on his lips, Sojourner Truth bearing her breasts at a woman's rights convention in 1851, Harriet Tubman exposing her revolver to some of the slaves she had freed who, fearing an unknown freedom, looked longingly backward to their captivity, thereby endangering the freedom of all. To be such a person or to witness anyone at this moment of transcendent presence is to know that what is human is linked by a daring compassion to what is divine. Walker's words capture perfectly what we're experiencing collectively under Neptune's ingress into Aries, with Saturn's conjunction with Neptune, and with the North Node setting up shop to convene everyone. These are moments of transcendent presence where we simultaneously face our greatest challenges and discover our most profound connections, our most vital capacity, our real, actual truth beyond the us and thems, away from the giggling at someone else's pain, apart from the labeling distinction between factions. We see ourselves naked, surely afraid, and irrevocably, recognizably human. Susan Griffin, a radical feminist philosopher, would add this. She's writing in 1978. I can be angry, I can hate, I can rage. But the moment I have defined another being as my enemy, I lose part of myself, the complexity and subtlety of my vision. I begin to exist in a closed system. When anything goes wrong, I blame my enemy. If I wake troubled, my enemy has led to this feeling. If I cannot sleep, it is because of my enemy. Slowly, all the power in my life begins to be located outside, and my whole being is defined in relation to this outside force, which becomes daily more monstrous, more evil, more laden with all the qualities in myself I no longer wish to own. The quality of my thought that is diminished. My imagination grows small. My self seems meager, for my enemy has stolen all of these. These critical insights for our current moment, sent to us from powerful leaders from the generation behind us, remind us that in times of upheaval and polarization, we can easily fall into the trap of locating all power and all problems somewhere outside of ourselves. Whether that's political opponents, other nations, baseless institutions, fallible leaders, even imperfect parents or partners. But when we do this, as Griffin says, we diminish ourselves. We lose our complexity and our power. And as Walker says, we lose our access to the divine. So how do we align with all this energy without being overwhelmed by it? Most of the advice I have for you sounds something like surf or breathe. First, we recognize that it is simply a time for the unexpected and the unprecedented at a simply bananas pace. That's just where we are. Second, we embrace the highest potential of all of these forces. Saturn's highest potential to ground us in realness and truthful reality. Neptune's highest potential of compassion and connection. And the North Node's highest invitation, a predestined gathering between us, the humans, and these powerful, impactful planets, wherein we are able to recognize that our collective path forward requires both confronting illusions and taking inspired action in service of each other, including members of the wrong tribe. Here's a simple practice for this week then. When you encounter someone still immersed in the Neptune-fueled delusions, whether online, just in the news, or in your personal life, resist both the urge to confront directly and the temptation to withdraw completely, right? Instead, ground, root. Ask your source, your God, to help you see across the fog surrounding this person. Ask yourself, what dream are they desperately clinging to? What fear lies beneath that certainty, that pretend certainty? What can I do to plant seeds of clarity and realness and integrity and truth in this person's mind, in this person's day? This might be asking gentle questions or inviting reflections rather than debate, sharing concrete examples of how politics are affecting real people, or simply maintaining your own grounding in reality while holding space for their eventual awakening. They will come. Remember that Neptune's fog lifts gradually, rarely in dramatic moments of conversion. You are dropping bits of absorbent material into a bucket of slowly evaporating water. The key is recognizing that we are in a collective decompression from delusion, and your steady commitment to truth with compassion creates safe harbors for others when they finally are ready to emerge from the dream. We know there are cultic dynamics at play. And I am not encouraging naive compromise. Like we see so many fearful, by the way, self-protective celebrities and institutions hoping might work, might protect. Remember that we are navigating a reckoning in which so many of our countrymen and women are slowly, painfully waking up from a collective delusion. Our job is to help the fog lift and to begin to dream the new dream so that others might join us and co-create with us as it grows. Finally, I want to leave you with one of my favorite Rumi poems. It's called The Guest House. This being human is a guest house. Every morning, a new arrival. A joy, a depression, a meanness. Some momentary awareness comes as an unexpected visitor. Welcome and entertain them all, even if they're a crowd of sorrows who violently sweep your house empty of its furniture. Still, treat each guest honorably. He may be clearing you out for some new delight. The dark thought, the shame, the malice, meet them at the door laughing and invite them in. Be grateful for whoever comes, because each has been sent as a guide from beyond. Let's listen to our guides, y'all. Let's be quiet enough, courageous enough, steady on our feet enough to listen and to respond appropriately, each move in its time. As we close today, I want to offer 3 things. First, in action, cultivate slowness. During times of acceleration and urgency, the revolutionary act might be to deliberately slow down. Cook a meal with real food that came from the ground. Write a letter by hand. Have a conversation without checking your phone. These small practices of being present rebuild our capacity for discernment when everything around us demands reaction. Root in the soil and in the rock of the planet we are lucky enough to inhabit. Go out of your way to touch a tree. I am not kidding. Touch a tree. Go touch a tree. We made fun of the hippies for it. I'm telling you, it's a real thing. Go touch the tree. and notice how deep its roots go. And notice how high its branches reach. Notice how small you are relative to it. Notice how strong and certain it is, how healthy and alive it is. Second, a reflection. Where in your own life are you experiencing the tension between stability and change? Are there places where you have clung to comfort at the expense of growth or transformation? Are there areas where you have chosen novelty without honoring what deserves preservation? As these planets show up for their storm, what apparent contradictions are you being invited to hold simultaneously rather than resolve prematurely? And third, some inspiration from Adrienne Rich, whose work illuminates the journey beneath surface illusions. I came to see the damage that was done and the treasures that prevail, the wreck and not the story of the wreck, the thing itself and not the myth. That is our Neptune and Aries journey. Having the courage to dive beneath the comforting delusions to face reality, knowing that hope isn't found in clinging to dissolving dreams, but in the clarity that emerges when we are willing to see things as they truly are, as they are unfolding. As Saturn meets Neptune at this cosmic threshold, we are being called to ground our spirituality and truth and our actions in compassion, recognizing that even as institutions crumble around us, our fundamental interconnectedness remains the treasure that prevails. If you would like to understand how these patterns are affecting you personally, it would be my great honor to look at that with you. I offer readings that help you navigate your unique relationship with these energies, your unique assignment for this life of yours. My email is in the episode description, so come, let's talk and let's see what we see together. I think the number one thing people say when they walk away from a reading is that they're so glad to know that, and that this feels like a new day, a new way to be in relationship, in comfortable relationship with oneself and one's circumstance. And possibly more empowered, right? More clear about what's possible, more clear about what the options are, more clear about what the gifts are, what the unique gifts are to navigate this time. Until next time, remember that the stars don't determine our fate. They simply reveal the currents in which we are swimming. How we navigate those currents, who we choose to swim alongside, how we choose to receive other humans and their fear, their imperfection, their courage remains our sacred choice. So until next time, be well, be conscious, and be kind. I'll see you soon.